I got that.
Okay, cool. I meant to ask you that earlier. Sorry.
I saw your website. It's really cool. I think that I used to be
It,
a web guy, and
it needs help, bro. It needs
it's that
serious help.
top, the top thing. It'd be cool if that was more visible. Because the first time I went to your website, oops, let me mute myself on the very top thing. I couldn't see that navigation the first time I went to your website, so I thought it was just a photo of you.
Right.
So maybe get that lowered or something, or get it on
Okay.
the side, or I don't know why that didn't. Maybe it was my browser.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Weebly, so it's you know it's all those build it yourself. There's limitations to them. And
Well, you built that.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, dude, it's minimal at best.
I used to build, and we're live now. I used to build a bunch of websites for people, a lot of celebrities. And then, when Facebook came along, I knew the writing, on the wall. And so these days, what I would say is that the most important thing for most websites is, a link to your Instagram and your
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah. That's on there.
Twitter. Like that's like the most important thing because most people, hardcore fans, will go to a website, hang out for a while, but in general,
Oh yeah, they want to see pictures and what am I saying? What are you saying? Exactly.
so well, first off, thanks for talking about this. Just to give people background, I, I'm lucky enough to know you, and I'm personally sort of getting a drum studio together. I want to produce drum recordings and send it off to my garage band buddies.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm lucky in that I can ask, the world's greatest drummer that ever lived.
Oh yeah, right.
Uh,
In my
how does
mind.
how does he do it? Um, and then through the magic of the internet, there you are in Zoom, like in Curt Bisquera in living color.
Here I am.
So maybe I could
Talking.
ask you, like, when did you start? And just interrupt me if you have a better agenda here. When did you start doing, uh, a recording of your own drums for people?
Believe it or not, I was one of the last hangers on of like I had this really deep belief that there's going to be a renaissance in the music industry and the studios are going to come back and labels are going to come back and there's going to be these massive budgets to make music again and videos and every day that I said that a studio would close down, a label would fold. There was always something that was just going against everything that I was believing in the music industry. And then it got to the point where it was like I was looking at my calendar going, wait a second. I used to be at Capitol Records or the Village or Record Plant. I'd be at those studios at least 2, 3, 4 times a week.
Right.
It was getting to like once a week, once a month, once every 2 months. It was like dwindling. Like the ramp was very, very steep going down.
Hmm.
And then at that point, I was like, shit, I got to do this, man. I got to start recording drums at my house because that's where it was going. The shift was starting to happen gear wise. Like you could get amazing microphones, mic pre's, a recording setup, and put it in your bedroom. Or people were building out studios and building out a room on their property, making a proper studio. And because of
Wow.
the technology becoming so readily available and accessible, and Sweetwater Sound, all these online mail order overnight, get it tomorrow kind of thing. It was like it was that was where everyone was going. So I knew at that point I was like, okay, I got to start being my own engineer and recording my own drums. So to answer your question, that was probably I want to say 2008,
Okay.
2009, and I think I dove in head on like 2010 is when I started getting all my mic pre's together. So yeah, 10 years ago, I got all my mic pre's together, my microphones, microphone company that I endorse, Audio Technica. Thank you. So I got outfitted with mics. I bought mic pre's. Bought Pro Tools. I now use PreSonus Studio One 5,
Mm-hmm.
who I also endorse. And that's what I do now. So people send me tracks and I play on their vanity projects. And there's also legitimate projects that come through that I record here. And, the union has been so cool to acknowledge that. So whoever's hiring me, the producer, can then run the session through the union and I could get my health, welfare, pension, and all that stuff paid for, and
Oh, it's
health,
rad.
health insurance. So yeah, it's changing times. So that's where it's at right now.
Right. Right. And so what was that like, if you remember, just vague, just when you first started recording yourself? And because as a I have a little experience as an engineer. You're wearing two hats, correct? I mean, you're wearing the engineer hat and you're trying to play drums.
Oh
Did it
my God,
is it
it was
frustrating?
so
I mean, how do you
it
get in the
was
mood?
it was so frustrating at first because you do have to wear two hats. It's like, okay, I have to be a drummer and I have to think creatively like a drummer, but then there's the other side, which is the technical part. I have to make sure I'm getting good signal. I have to be my own engineer, and it's by myself. I can't ask my wife to, hey, can you engineer for me? I mean, sometimes she'll punch me in or whatever
Mm-hmm.
if I'm deep in a project, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the time I do it by myself, and I could control Studio One with my iPhone, so it's pretty
Okay.
easy. I just
Okay.
do it that way. But uh, yeah, it was daunting at first because you have to wear those two hats, and those hats have to fit equally at a high level because you want the engineering to match the playing and the playing to match the engineering. So luckily through the years of all the recording I've done, I started recording in 1990. That was my
Mm-hmm.
first legit, recording session. Luck of the draw with Bonnie Raitt.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, every session I've ever gone to, I always show up early because I'm the drummer and I have to show up early to get sounds. But I'd always ask the engineer, what's the signal chain to the kick drum, the snare drum? What's the overheads doing? So that's how I learned signal flow on how to mic a drum, how to measure out the microphones, which we'll get into later.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things, getting levels, EQ, compression, all that stuff. So you know, there are no questions that are too dumb, and that was one of the gems that I remember all the greats have told me, through the years, the Joe Ciccarellis, Al Schmidt, um, Ed Sheerney, these guys that say there's no question that's dumb because they're all questions that you need to know if you're going
Wow.
to learn this this trade, this aspect of music.
That's
So
heavy because guys like me, I had to learn on my own. You had like a Chicarelli. You get to watch the greatest engineers
yeah,
of all
oh yeah,
time,
yep,
mic you and record you. I mean, that's a edge right there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally took advantage of that too because it was like, okay, if I'm going to be here and I'm going to be doing this, I have to know, like, I'm sure like F1 drivers, they know what their car, how it's built from the ground up. So they know if they feel a shimmy in the wheel or something, they know generally what's going on with the car.
Yeah.
Same same with drummers. We need to know what's happening not only sitting at the kit with drum heads, the mechanics of it, felts, everything. The spring on the kick drum pedal,
Right.
all these mechanical things, plus going outwards from the microphones to Studio One or Pro Tools or whatever to the DAW. So we have to know all that signal flow, the signal chain, all of that. And
Right.
it's daunting at first, but you know what? I took it one element at a time. So I started with the kick drum. Okay, how is a kick drum mic'd and why? And what kind of microphones are used for it? And what
Right.
proper mic pre's are used for it? So there was a lot of information. And when I got into it, um, the information on the internet was just building. But now you could go on YouTube and see a ton of videos about how to mic a kick drum, how to mic a drum kit, how to get a great drum kit sound on a budget. Like it's all out there now. Super easy.
Now, did you yourself ever do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's times now
To
where
work a thing in Pro Tools, or how to make a sub channel or a grouping or blah blah blah.
yeah, auxiliary track, a
Hmm.
bus, how to bus signals to a reverb, and yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, and if I don't know, I'll Google it,
Hmm.
and I'll go to YouTube. I'll type in YouTube. How do I send a bus channel to a reverb? If I want my snare to have reverb, or I want to compress the snare, how do I do that?
Right.
And it's all on YouTube. And there's a zillion ways to do it. How to skin a cat, all by amateurs and like pros. There's all these like master classes now that you could take from Al Schmidt, Joe Ciccarelli. Like, I mean, those are just a few, but Chris Lord Alge. You could like learn how to become a better engineer now
Right.
through the internet. They have these mix with the master classes. Have you heard of that? Where
What
they
is that
show
about?
you
Tell me about that.
Mix with the Masters is a well, they used to have it where you can actually go to the studio, but now it's COVID. I think they're still doing it, but now online. But you pay a fee, and it's an intensive 2 or 3 week course where they show you how to make a mix of a track. I've personally never done it, but I've had friends that have done it, and they said it's awesome because they're showing you their little tricks of the trade and how to make a mix of a tune and what plugins they use and stuff like that. So I mean, the information's out there.
I
How to
believe
record.
that it's important to have classes, especially right now when some people are stuck inside and all. And you don't you teach classes in drumming? How
Yeah,
can people get to
yeah.
that?
You could go to my website, curtbisquera.com, and click on coaching, and I do online coaching, drum coaching, and we can talk. No topic is taboo, um, as long as it's about drumming. But yeah, we could dive
Or
deep.
skateboarding?
Or skateboarding. Yeah, we could talk about skateboarding or drumming. I can't coach you on skating because I haven't skated in a while, but I could definitely coach you on drumming. So yeah, just go to my website and you can
Say it
book.
again. What's the address they go to?
Go to curtbisquera.com, CURT, B as in boy, ISQUERA.com, and go to the website. And in the navigation, you could click on coaching, and you could book by the hour there, and you could do a little additional half-hour segments too, um, on top of your hour booking. So yeah, that's one great way to just get with me one on one, and we could go through drumming on coaching and whatever you're playing, your recording techniques, any or all things drumming.
Now that is rad. Like, you're totally bummed out. You're stuck in the house. You're trying to make a drum kit. You could hang out with Curt Bisquera. I mean, come on. That's the shit right there.
Well, what's cool about it is that I'm meeting so many of these great players from around the world. Italy, France, Fresno. They're all over the place, and they're great drummers, and they're just getting into the recording thing. And I think this is going to spawn some wonderful music in the future, in the very near future, as we're navigating in this industry called music. We're we're all diving in as deep as possible, and so now we're going to be coming up with some cool stuff, I think.
I think you're right. Everybody's trying to get over that initial shock, and some really great art is going to be made.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, right, during any weird time during in history, there was always something that was wonderful, right?
Yeah, yeah.
you know
So, what do you think would be a better approach to talking about recording drums? Would it be, uh, your where should we start in your setup? To get somebody who wants to set something like this up, to do it. And then and just to, because I'm forgetful, we want to also cover what is it like to do a drum job on this setup, so people drummers can know they don't feel embarrassed when they book a job on how do I get paid, What do they expect of me? Do they want me to mix it? Do they want me, or just do I just hand them raw files? How do I do that? So process.
It's yeah, okay, so let's just start with the basic. Let's just start with the fact that we'll go easy. What if one of your guitar player friends says, "Hey, I need you to record drums for me. I got this cool song idea and I need you to play this song for me. It's 120 beats per minute and I need you to play a verse chorus, 16 bar solo section, chorus out." That's the idea I have. And, he's strumming and that's kind of the groove he's got going on. Yeah, just play like a simple rock beat to that. Okay, first of all, where do you begin?
Your metronome on your DAW.
Metronome on your DAW. Make sure that's set up at 120. But even before that, you have to make sure you have a computer that's powerful enough to record multi-track recording. I highly recommend Studio One 5 by PreSonus or Pro Tools or Logic, or I mean all the DAWs now are amazing. I personally love Studio One because it's so easy to edit drums in, like just in an instant the client could have great sounding drum tracks. But you have to I guess the best way to put it is just understand how to record your drums into your DAW. So we could talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. So, all right, we'll start with the kick drum where I started. So you want to mic your kick drum into your DAW. First of all, you need a DAW, you need a computer,
Yep.
you need a microphone and a mic pre. That microphone is going to be plugged into the mic pre, and the computer, the DAW, will see through your audio interface your mic pre. A lot of audio interfaces have built-in mic pre's, so we'll start there. I use a PreSonus Quantum 2626, and it has 8 built-in mic pre's in it.
Mm-hmm.
X-Max mic pre's that sound amazing, really punchy. And so you could plug your microphone directly into, let's say, the PreSonus Quantum 2626, plug it directly into there. It's best to have someone to help you because it's hard to
Yeah.
run back and forth to the studio.
Yeah.
So you could hit the kick drum, and your friend could help you get a level into your DAW from the audio interface by turning up the input gain switch. And as long as that signal at the hardest point of what you're hitting your kick drum at, I'm hitting it kind of soft right now, but you get the idea. When you're smacking it, if it goes up to 0 or near 0, you're money. Don't let that signal go past into the red, because
Okay.
then you're distorting the input. If it dips into the yellow, that's cool every now and then, but you want to keep it yellow and under. But if it ever hits red, that's bad because that means it's distorting the input and it will record that distortion. So you don't want that.
Okay.
So that's essentially how you get your bass drum recorded into your DAW. Microphone, mic cable
Yep.
into the interface, into the um, mic pre that's on there, and hold on.
Yeah. Let's get really OCD on the signal flow. So you have a microphone that's going into a microphone cable, probably XLR, going into your mic pre, probably XLR, which is then going with either a USB cable to your computer, or a FireWire cable, or some kind of cable, and that's the that goes into your DOS software. And you're
Right.
saying you want, hopefully you or a friend has a lead foot, and you want to get that signal in the kick to be right there beneath red, basically.
Right. Right. Exactly. Ken, I lost signal on you. I could
Oh,
hear you. I could hear you, but I can't see you because someone was trying to call me and it knocked me off Zoom. So let me just go adjust that in the computer.
okay. I can see you. I can see you and hear you. So maybe you have to maybe turn your camera back on for you or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
forgot to shut my phone off.
Oh, that's no big deal. I think that only happened on your end because on this side it looked fine.
No, I know exactly what happened. It when the call came through, it kicks you off of Zoom, and then it directs you to your phone call. So
Right.
that's what happened. I got kicked off, and I just had to sign back into the meeting. So all right, we're groovy.
So we got our signal flow from the kick drum all dialed in.
Yes, we got that all dialed in, and then you repeat that process to the snare, to the hi hat, tom one, tom two, and then your overheads left and right. And then if you want, you could do a room mic, which I'm doing. So that's eight channels, and a lot of these audio interfaces, a lot of them do have 8 channels on it. So you could
That's
do
pretty common.
yeah, it's pretty common, and you could do a kit on that. I use the PreSonus Quantum 2626. That would be the ultimate for any drummer because it's got 8 inputs right in the front for 8 microphones. The mic pre sound great, and then whatever DAW you're going into, I use Studio One, but you could, if you're using Pro Tools or Logic or whatever, then you could dial in your EQ and all that stuff once you've recorded the raw.
Now, where can people pick up that interface?
You can go to presonus.com and look at all their interfaces that have eight or more inputs. But you could get it mail order. I get my stuff from Sweetwater Sound. I have an account with them, so I get my stuff through them. Oh God, any online
Guitar Center and
yeah,
Music Friend.
all of them. Music Friend, Guitar Center, they all carry the PreSonus line. So
Cool.
yeah.
And
But yeah,
what kind of a kick mic would you recommend?
well, on this kick drum right now, I'm using a AKG D112, which is designed specifically for kick drum and bass, electric bass cabinets. So it records low end and it's got punch. And I have that mounted inside the kick drum with a May miking system.
Oh, Randy May.
Yeah, Randy May. You know Randy.
Yeah. I don't know him, but I own a lot of his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So and I do that for convenience because when I'm recording at home, these drums aren't always set up. This is the foray of my house. So these aren't always set up. So when I'm done, I got to break them down. So it's just easier to have the kick drum mic mounted inside, and I could just get the mic cable, plug it in, and I'm good to go.
That's killer. I bet you that's most people's situation. Not everybody has a space just for their drums.
Right. And mic stands, which I forgot to mention on our quest to how to get a drum sound.
Yeah.
You also need mic stands for your drum kit. So before you even get microphone stands and measure the height of where everything is, and you can then go to the music store or order online because of the COVID-19 thing and order the appropriate microphone stands that'll fit your kit.
Mm-hmm.
Usually standard mic stands work perfectly for a drum kit because drum kits are fairly low, and
Okay.
or if you set up higher, you could get the microphone stand to adjust, up or down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Like overhead mics.
for overhead mics, yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Cool. So that's the kick. So what about the snare?
Same process for every instrument of your drum kit.
What
If
about
it's
the snare mic? What kind of mic would you recommend for a snare?
okay on the my snare, I'm using the Audio Technica AT650, which is their um, answer to the Shure 57, which
Okay.
has been the tried and proven mic through the years. Um, and the same process again. It's a dynamic mic, just like the kick drum mic. Which, by the way, dynamic mics do not need phantom power.
Right.
So you could plug it directly into the interface, turn up the input, and you're good to go. So same thing with the mic, mic cable into the interface of the mic pre, set your level, get it, to 0 or a little above in the yellow, good to go into your DAW.
Cool. And then some people choose to mic the bottom of their snare drum.
Yes, that's a little more advanced because A, it requires two mics. B, it requires yet another input. And sometimes, you're only given 8 with your audio interface.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. But if you daisy chain another audio interface, then you could do another mic underneath. Now, because there's two microphones, top and bottom, the bottom mic more than likely you will flip the phase, meaning that you will flip the oh God, what do they call it? I'm a
The
drummer.
ground wire or the polarity, the
polarity. Thank you. Yeah, it switches the polarity of the microphone. So you ever hear like something and it sounds like out of whack and it makes you feel dizzy?
like it's in a like your head's got earwax, too much earwax.
Yeah. That's usually because you're listening to something out of phase. So if you were to plug in two microphones, top and bottom, for the snare drum mic, and you hear it back after you recorded it, it would sound like that, and that's because it's out of phase, meaning that the two phases are opposite. They're not together. So, and of course, there's a gajillion professional engineers online that could tell you the appropriate way. I'm just telling you the drummer way that I know.
Right, we're just getting a drum sound here.
Yeah, ooga booga, aga iga, aga booga. Drummer talk, right? We're pounding on rocks all the time.
Drummers aren't going to be able to go call Chickarelli, most I can't.
Right. Call me, book a session, and we'll go through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you flip the bottom mic out of phase. So then that way, both will then, when you listen to the recorded track of the snare drum, will be in phase.
Right.
Dig?
So it's not going to vanish. It's not going to sound like you got a bunch of earwax in your.
Correct. Yeah, and you'll know when something sounds out of phase because it'll sound really thin, and it'll sound like someone's sticking a knife through your head. That's the best way I could describe it. And then, past the snare drum, you do that with the hi-hat, your toms, and then your overheads. And it's all the same technique.
And some people choose to not put a mic on their hi-hat, and some people do.
Yeah, people that do put a mic on their hi-hat, that's for extra added control of the level and maybe, sound-wise. But more than most, you could get a good hi-hat sound if your overheads are imbalanced. Now, let me tell you about overheads. I used to mic my drums because I didn't know any better. I used to mic my drums with the microphones looking down at my drums like evenly.
Like two chopsticks?
Yeah, like two chopsticks. Yeah, exactly. Like two chopsticks like that, like looking down.
Okay.
But I realized that like either the left would sound too loud or the right would sound too loud and it would sound out of balance. So I asked the great Al Schmidt. I was like, why is this happening when I mic my drum kit? Actually, no, I'm sorry. This was a dear friend of mine who lives in Nashville. Wonderful, amazing engineer, David Hall. I want to give him props to this because he taught me how to properly mic my overheads. So he said, because the snare drum is the loudest transient, when you record a snare drum, it's the loudest thing that happens when you hit it, and it's the shortest waveform, and it spikes up really high when you look at the waveform. It has a really sharp spike. It goes up and down real quick.
Straight up.
Yeah, because it's a short signal. Bah,
True.
Unlike a tom.
Longer.
That goes boom, and then it's still ringing.
This is getting heavy. I hope everybody's listening to this. This is getting heavy. Go ahead.
I know this is. See, it's a lot of science. Is it too much? Because I
No,
can
I
turn
love
it.
this. I love
I
this.
can.
I'm a drummer. Come on, drummers love this.
Okay. So when you hit the snare drum, it's that it's the
Short,
frequency,
sharp.
short frequency that's sharp, and it's a sharp hit. And then when you look at it, it's sharp, and you'll see it on your DAW. Now that sound is hitting your overhead left and your overhead right at two different times because of the distance of the center of the snare drum right there to these microphones that are hanging over your drum kit.
That makes
The,
sense.
the sound travels differently to the left, to the right.
Okay.
So, in order to get them evenly from the snare drum to the mics, overhead left and overhead right, to get the recorded sound evenly so it doesn't sound like the left or the right is too heavy, you have to measure equal distance from the center of your drum head to overhead left and overhead right mic.
Wow.
Okay. And what that looks like, and I can't show you because I don't have a secondary camera, the microphones are at different levels. My
Oh,
right,
the height.
the height, yeah.
Ah.
So my right one over here, this one, which is out of camera, is lower than the one over here to my left.
Oh.
Now, the rule of thumb is 3 drumsticks, which is the average drumstick is 16 inches, right? So
Right.
if you take 16 inches from the center of your snare, add another stick, that's 32, right?
Yep. Yep. Don't ask me the third one, but yeah.
Right. And then the third one is what, 48? I think.
Okay. I'm going to trust you on that. I'm not good.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something like that. 16 times 3.
3 drumsticks, people.
Gee whiz. So yeah, that's your rule of thumb. 3 drumsticks from the center. That's weird. We could play an odd meter and count all day long, but we can't even add 16 plus 16 plus
If the number
16.
ends with a 6, I'm out. After 2 of them,
I
yeah.
think it is.
I'm
I think it's
stressed.
48. I think it's 48 inches. So
Okay.
48 inches from the center of the snare drum on your left and to your right. And what you will find is that usually the right will be the lower one to match the 48 inches from the center of your snare drum.
That's heavy. That is.
So in theory, the physics of that, in theory, when you have that dialed in equally, 48 inches left, 48 inches right, the distances and the height of the mics will be different. It'll look weird. It's not supposed to look sexy. It's supposed to sound good.
Right.
Then when you hit that snare drum, everything's in phase, everything is balanced.
That's heavy.
And so once I started doing that, I was like, oh my God, my drum sound just it just opened up to the gods. So yeah, that's always great rule of thumb. 48 inches from the center of the snare drum, left and right overheads.
Wow.
That's how you get a balanced drum sound.
Nobody ever told me that. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, now here's a disclaimer. There are engineers that'll do it evenly and they'll just use the faders or the input levels to get the right balance. That's another way to do it too.
Compensate on the board.
Yeah, you compensate on the board or you compensate with the mic freeze. I personally like doing even input level and adjust the mics accordingly so everything's balanced. So when you look at the left and right, when you just put those faders up, they're together. They're in unison. It's a properly balanced stereo signal of the overhead left and right of the kit.
Who taught you that again?
David Hall. You could go to davidhall.com.
What's so heavy about that is that it's visual, and that's a huge part of engineering, right? Is placement.
Right.
So the reason I like the way you do it is because that reminds me as an engineer that there are physics happening here.
Yeah, there is physics, and it's physics, and it's sound, and it's math. It's all the things that we do as drummers, right?
Right. To do it the other way, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, because I'm so ADD, it becomes more transparent. I wouldn't remember why I'm turning one down and one up, and
Well, I find this way easier because I don't want to sit there and fiddle and run back and forth and try to find the right balance between the two
just hit
microphones.
them both equally. And
Right. I'd rather hit the microphones equally from that snare drum sound and know that by tweaking the inputs, they'll be even once I record them, and they'll be hitting the levels evenly. And
wow,
man, once I discovered that, you could essentially record your drum kit with just overheads and a kick drum mic, and it'll sound awesome.
right, because it's so perfectly mic'd.
Yes, exactly. So
Wow,
that right there will improve your drum sound like a gajillion percent.
wow. I got to run in my garage and do that after this
Yeah,
session.
yeah.
Uh,
48 inches. And oh, check this out. My wife sews as a hobby, and so she bought one of these last time she was at Joanne Fabric. And you know these things, right? These measuring
oh yeah,
tapes.
my
You know,
mom used to use one of those.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So did
the
my mom.
yellow ones.
Yeah, the yellow ones. So dig it. She bought me one of these, and what I did was mark 48 inches onto the
Ah,
tape with red.
right. Yeah. Who knew that that was a recording tool?
Right. But I would watch like Al Schmidt when he would mic a piano. He would do that. He would get a measuring tape or actually a mic cable, because he's been doing it so long, he knows the proper distance. And so he would get the measuring tape.
Hmm.
And that's what I do when I do my overheads. I get the measuring tape. I go to the center of the snare drum, dead center, up to the head of the microphone where the screen is, exactly 48 inches, and do the same on the right. And it's just easier to use one of these because it's so
It's accurate.
accurate and easy to store. And if you use a metal one that retracts and stuff, that's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah, you might
You
scratch something up.
know, exactly. Or
Wow.
if you're a drummer, which we all are, you'll cut yourself.
Oh, for sure. I would do it a couple times.
Yeah. So yeah, there's your 48 inches left and right.
Wow. That is heavy duty.
Yeah, and again, it's not going to look right. You're going to look at it and go, "Whoa, why is that mic higher than the right one?" Well, there's a reason, because your snare, if you're a right-handed drummer, the snare is always to the left, right? Like the dead center is always like in the middle of the kick drum, where your kick drum pedal is. That's kind of dead center of
That's true.
stereo,
That's true.
depending on how you. Well, I don't know how you would apply that to Terry Bozzio's setup, but but yeah, on a conventional drum kit, a four-piece like this is, the center is where you're sitting, you know, and just think of the overheads as another pair of ears, and you want to hear everything in perfect stereo.
And that is so. Thank you so much for that. That is
Yeah.
like literally is going to change my game right there.
Okay.
Just that. And let's talk about mics. So Tom mics. What are you using? What do you recommend on the toms?
Well, again, I'm using Audio Technica microphones, and these are, I believe, a discontinued mic called the 450. I think that's what it's called, and it's a clip-on mic. I wish I could
So
show
no
you.
mic stand there. You got claws, basically, some kind of.
Yeah, they. You know what? I could. Let me hold on. Let me get this together, and I'll show you. It looks like
Okay.
this. It's a clip-on mic, and it's a high SPL mic, so it works with drums, it works with violins, trumpets, anything that has a loud signal, and it has a clip on it, so you could clip it onto the violin or to the bell of the trumpet or the flugelhorn or whatever. It looks like this.
Okay. Ah, how cool! Wow,
And that little clip just clips onto the rim of the drum.
that's
Now,
awesome.
now, uh, that's just one of many ways to go to mic your toms. Um, there's some wonderful companies. Presonus is. I'm not supposed to say anything. Nothing. Um, there's a bunch of companies.
Edit.
Audix, SE. There's a ton of companies now that have like drum mic packs that sound awesome. Uh, so you could go
You can get
online.
that mic pack, and it's got everything in it. You don't have to go piecemeal the thing together.
Right. You could have microphone sent to you, and it's tom mics, kick drum mics, overhead mics, hi-hat mics, all in a case.
All meant to work with each other, all ready
Correct.
to go.
All ready to go. So you could buy a drum mic pack, and inside I think it usually comes with 3 toms, because they think of it as a 5-piece kit, two up and one down, 2 mounted on the kick drum, and then 1 floor tom.
Hmm.
Kick drum, snare, overheads, hi-hat mic. So yeah, you could get a full drum kit mic set.
That's rad.
Yeah.
What about, how are your drums tuned to be recorded?
All right. That's a deep subject, but I'll just generally go over it.
Okay.
My drums are tuned that in a way that it could be universal. It could be used in any situation, in any style. I usually tune my drums to the drum itself. I don't ever try to overextend it by cranking on it or going too low. I like to tune my drums where they naturally reside. And these
To the
drums,
shell, so to speak.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and these are DW drums, of course, and they sound like this. I'm gonna unplug this so you can
Okay.
hear what the drums sound like. So there you go. That's what those drums sound like. They're a little on the low side, but for whatever reason, they record super fat and punchy. I tried them up, and they sounded a little too ringy, a little too thin at the top for me. I tried them lower than that, and they're too flappy.
Okay.
So right where they are is like where these drums like to sit.
Right. And because you've recorded them. And that's one of the weird things about recording drums is what you hear with your naked ear is not what what the mic hears. The mic's sitting right next to that drum. And then, that
Correct.
goes into a mixing board. You've got things like compressors and reverbs, and
Right.
it's
Now, what any great engineer will tell you, and all the greats have told me this, before you even touch any tweaking in your DAW to get a good sound, move the microphone first.
yes.
Because a lot of your sound is what the microphone is hearing.
Mic placement.
Mic placement. Thank you. So you want to make sure your mic placement is proper. And again, you could go on YouTube and watch hours and hours of mic placement on drums, and you'll find what works best for your drum kit. A lot of drum kits require different miking techniques because of the way they sound and where the sound is projecting from. So, some drums need to be mic'd from far away. Some need to have the mic right on the drum. Some need to be just kind of pulled off from it 6 to 8 inches. Again, depending on the drum, depending how you play, depending on the style of music, all of that. So that in itself right there is a big can of worms that
I know.
you could dive into.
Supposedly, though, that's the goal. I mean, supposedly, if you spend more time placing your mic, you'll spend a lot less time trying to fix crap, basically.
Right, exactly. And what you're hearing, what I just played, everything is flat.
Right.
And that's because of mic placement. And I will say that it has everything to do with the mic placement and your mic pre's. I have really good mic pre's, so
They
it
give it
helps.
what, a truer sound, a cleaner sound? What does that do?
Well, the mic pre will it boosts the signal and it gives you the opportunity to also EQ the drum. Uh, some have built-in compressors on it. The ones I have don't, but it just gives you a really that's a whole other deep subject too. Is
I know.
mic
Pre's are
pre's.
a heavy thing with
It's a,
engineers.
yeah, it's a heavy thing because every mic pre has a different characteristic. My particular mic pre's are renowned for drums, the Neves 1073s, which I have on all these drums, and that's essentially the sound you're hearing, with the exception of the hi hat, overheads, and the room mic.
Okay.
those are the mic pre's of my interface, which is the PreSonus Quantum 2626. So I have those four blended in with the Neves, which is the kick snare and toms. So I have half half of my kit through the um, audio interface directly, and then the other four going through my Neve mic pre's into the DAW. So they go together into the DAW, and that's essentially the drum sound. But all of the inputs, all of the drums are flat, and that's because of mic placement. Maybe there's a little EQ on the toms, but everything else is straight.
That's rad.
And the
That
reason why I record that way and I prefer to have that sound is because whoever's producing or mixing, that gives them the freedom to add whatever they do to get even a better sound than what I'm providing them.
right.
And I highly recommend that when you send your files out, if you're recording and you send your files out, give them those raw files, because again, you don't know what style of music, you don't know how loud or soft they want your drums. So it gives the engineer or the mixer or whoever's mixing the tune in its finality, it gives them, complete autonomy to do whatever they need to do to get the right sound for the song.
That's heavy advice, and that's got to be tough for some drummers, because drummers, like any artist, they have an ego in there, and it's got to be a little naked to send somebody naked feeling to send somebody naked drums.
Right, right. There were a few engineers that I've worked for that I still work for. They don't want anything fancy. They want everything just, they're like, put up a mic. All I want to hear is the essential tone of the drum, and I want the recorded signal. Because you know what they do? They do sound replacement. They'll take
Oh,
my they'll take my recorded tom sound or my snare sound or my kick drum, and that recorded waveform, that spikes up and then goes down. They'll take that and replace it with some of their favorite samples from whatever drum library.
yes,
And I used to have a big, big, big problem with that.
yeah,
I
because
because when I came up recording, it was all about having that sound. Oh, you need a Ludwig sound? Let me go grab my Ludwig. Oh, you need a piccolo? Let me go grab my piccolo. Oh, you need a big marching snare drum? Let me go grab my marching snare drum. Now, the technology is so advanced that you don't need all those drums anymore. A lot of engineers and producers have that in their arsenal of sound. So they could take your recorded performance and replace all those sounds with their favorite sounds. A prime example is the Black Album, Metallica. Those drum sounds recorded with Tama drums. Most of it is the Tama sound, but was enhanced with other samples and stuff. And
they were always very open about that, about
yeah,
how they did that, and it grew a lot of controversy when they were all beginning to do that replacement
yeah,
stuff.
and that was one of the big problems I had, because I was like, I'm a purist, I'm a drummer, and I'm going to get that sound, and because I came up on tape, you had to do a take from top to bottom. So that was my whole thing. Is like, well, if we do takes from top to bottom, let me get the right drum to make the right sound.
Mhm.
But because budgets became smaller and smaller, time became less and less. You had to record 3 songs in 2 hours, so it was like boom, boom, boom. Set up your drums. Okay, record. Get out of here, because we're doing overdubs.
Right.
It was like that. So it was like they didn't have time to sit there and tweak and get the right sound. It was like, we'll deal with it in post production. We'll replace it. Kind of like when you're doing movie stuff. It's like, oh, we didn't get that line. We couldn't hear you say, oh, look out, here comes the meteor. We'll get that in post.
Yeah, we'll loop that. Yeah,
We'll loot that. We'll get you to come to the studio and
voiceover. Yeah,
do a voiceover. So
yeah.
that's kind of what's happening with drums now. And I used to have a problem with that. And I completely divorced myself from that. It's like, okay, whatever. And then I realized, wait a second, that takes the pressure off of me. I could do one take, maybe two, send you my information, and then you can do whatever you want with my information.
They're still
Make it,
relying on where you're putting it.
yeah, but a lot of times now they'll take where I put it and even quantize it even more
I know they
to
can do
make
that.
me a robot. And I used to have, again, used to have a big problem with that. You're going to make me a robot. You're going to beat detect me. I don't care. You could do whatever you want. Just write me that check. Send that check to Kirky B Productions. Make sure it's got a couple of commas on it. So that's what I'm, and when I realized that, I was like, oh God, the pressure's off. I could just provide the information, send it off, and let you deal with it. And I could go in my backyard, have my espresso, and relax.
This might be one of the largest lessons in this talk because, again, drummers have egos. Drummers want to feel like the thing they make, that's what you should press, you
Right.
know?
And
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 you're saying you've been very flexible. You really had to be adaptable. How did you do that? I mean, I think a lot of drummers wouldn't, don't you? Or has everybody just succumbed to this?
most drummers have succumbed to this, but there are still drummers that stand by their sound, stand by their way of how you mic them, and I totally respect that. The only reason why uh, I succumbed to it is because I wanted to work.
Yes.
I wanted to keep working,
You get more work
and
this way than being the other way.
right, because I'm not a specialty drummer. I'm not a guy that does my own sound. Like Terry Bozzio, that's his thing. That's his kit. That's his sound. That's his. I use him. He's a great example because what he's created, no one else can do. Because he's a master. He mastered that, and that requires mass masterful sound, masterful recording.
Why would you
Um,
change that? You wouldn't change that.
yeah, you can't change that. So you have to build around that.
Yeah.
You know.
That's pretty heavy, dude. I mean, that's really great advice. Really, really great advice.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying you have to conform. Conform if you want to, but if you want your sound to be your sound, man, by all means, it's a free country. Wear
Yep.
your mask and get your sounds.
So just because we have this mic here, this I can see your snare mic. Is it how? What are you thinking when you place that? Are you pointing at the center of the head? Are you pointing at the rim?
uh, I've been taught through the greats the two finger method from the rim
Okay.
above the rim. So you put your two fingers, and let's say this hand is the rim. Put your two fingers on the rim, and then right above that should be the head of the microphone pointing to the center of the snare drum,
Right.
about 1.5 to 2 inches in. And again, that's general placement. You may find that it sounds better
Might need to
away
move it around.
or move it around. Yeah,
Start there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Start there. That's a good starting point. And that technique applies for all the rest of the drums as well, excluding the kick drum. Kick drum.
Yeah.
That's there's 22 inches depending on how big your kick drum is. There's a lot of room in there to figure out what sounds best.
Yeah. Some people like it near the head. Some people like it backed off.
Right.
Some people like it nearly outside of the bass drum or outside of the bass drum.
Entirely, yeah.
Yeah.
So
All those things.
again, through mic placement and researching and experimenting, that's where you'll find your best sounds.
What about cymbal selection?
Well, I'm a Pisces guy, so any Pisces are going to sound amazing. It was Chad Wackerman who got me connected. It was Chad Wackerman and Jim Keltner got me connected with Pisces. And I asked Chad, I was like, Chad, why do you like Pisces so much? And he goes, they record the best out of any cymbal. And I said, why? And his answer, his reply was, the frequency of those cymbals microphones like. And I was like, wow. And he was right. Like when I hear a recorded Pisces, it just for whatever reason sounds appropriate to the drum kit
Yeah.
and to the music. And I'm not knocking any other cymbal company. I just prefer that frequency over the other cymbals.
Hmm.
You know,
Right.
I talk to all my East Coast drummer friends. They're like, no, Zildjian. That's and I'm down with that. I used to play Zildjian, and and again, that's all preference. That's all
Right.
preference. But for whatever reason, Pisces sound great under the mic, and again, your cymbal selection will dictate what kind of music you're playing.
Right.
Achilles Priester uses all color sound and rudes.
Okay.
And those things are clangy and really
Yeah.
thick and chunky, but for the type of music he's playing, it works perfectly,
Right.
recorded and live.
I used to use Paiste 404s, which were a student line,
Yes, those
but
sound
engineers
amazing.
loved the way those things recorded for some reason.
Yeah, because they're a softer sound, not so brash. And
Yeah.
so I think because of that, that's why engineers liked them.
Yeah, they're
Because it
very
was,
dull
yeah,
sounding.
dull sounding and more controllable in the mix.
Right. Yeah. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Any what's your cymbal setup in this particular drum set? Drummers like to know these kind of things.
Okay. On my hi hats, they're 16-inch. The top hi hat is a 16-inch thin Paiste crash traditional. On the bottom is a rude 16-inch crash because they're thick. So that's my hi hat setup.
So you have crash cymbals for your hi-hats.
Yeah. Kind of thick and chunky, but
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
sizzly.
Totally.
My two crashes, the paper thin 20-inch prototype, and over here the 18-inch paper thin prototype. I say prototype because they don't make these.
Okay.
They were actually made for Keltner, and he didn't dig them, and so he laid them on me. But they sound like this. Really
So
thin
being
sounding,
paper thin, they're gonna have more lows.
more lows, and a shorter decay.
Yep.
And then I have the Vinny cymbal. I call them the Vinny cymbals. The Formula 602, the
Oh, I
10
love
inch.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is the 10-inch splash. That's mounted right over my bass drum. And then last but not least, the 21-inch Dry Ride Master Series.
Yeah, that's a great ride.
So yeah, I would say these cymbals are a little on the darker, softer side, but for whatever reason, they just record beautifully in all styles. It just, it took me a minute to find that combo,
Yeah.
but once I did, man, it just like they work for every situation that I record in.
They sound beautiful.
Thank you, Peisty.
That's cool. Well, have we covered it all? Do
Pretty
you did you
much.
did you place these in this spot, in this area, in this space on purpose, or does that matter? Is it just because this is where they fit? Uh, some people use baffles on the toms.
These drums are wide open with the exception of the snare drum, which I'm using a big fat snare drum donut.
Yep.
And
Wasn't that once called a Ritchie ring?
oh god, yeah, I think that it. It originally started back in the '60s. Richie Ring.
Yeah.
Who was Richie? It was an
I
actual
have no
dude named
idea.
Richie.
I have no idea who Ritchie was.
There's an actual dude named Richie, and I think he cut out an old drum head and just put it on top of.
That's what I used to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is a 4x14 copper GW. This is what it sounds like without the big fat snare drum donut. Oops. Now with the donut.
Wow.
Big difference, right?
Dude. Yeah. Shorter but the
So
same. It's shorter but the same.
yeah, a little fatter, a little thicker,
Hmm.
and yeah. So the kick drum has slight muffling on the front and back head, and the toms are wide open.
Okay.
Only because I like the ring of the toms, and because they're
When you
And
tune them correctly, you don't really need a bunch of tape on them, and unless you're
no,
going for a certain sound.
yeah, you could put paper towels, you could put towels, shirts, hats, wallets, whatever. You could put
Yeah.
whatever you want in there.
Right.
But yeah, that's essentially recording with Kirky B.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yes, anytime, and we could do more down the road.
And let's remind people if they want to have a little private session with you on drums or recording or whatever, how do they do that?
Yes, go to my website, curtbisquera.com, click on coaching, and book your time right there.
Cool.
And
I'm gonna turn this off unless there's something you want to add.
yeah, just want to thank all my companies for um, supporting me all these years. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this with you today. So thank you, DW, Peisty, Vader, Audio Technica, Randy May, uh, Big Fat Snare Drum, um, God, Slug, Percussion. God, there's so many. Presonus, Tunerfish. I don't know. Go to my website. They're all listed on there. I can't
Cool.
think of them right now. But yeah, you know, the, I guess the one thing I would say is that because of the COVID thing and we really don't know when we're going to get out, this is definitely a great way to learn and take the time to learn how to record your own drums and to create music with all your friends that play different instruments and to send files back and forth and make music. And I think this is a good time. It's gonna bring out some really cool music within the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Shit, three to 5 months. What am I talking about? 5 months from now, we're gonna hear some cool stuff.
I agree. Yeah. Well, thank you, Kurt.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna turn the live feed off.
All right.